Welcome everyone to another episode of Vintage Unix Computing. This is one of my Sun Ultra 5 that Sun Microsystems produced from 1998 until I think 2002 or something. I purchased one used in about 2004. Surprisingly, in retrospect, I even paid for this some €270 or something. I used one like this for all the major Rock Linux and later T2 non-x86 development. I say one of these because this I got many years later for free, and this is slightly faster than the model I had initially. Initially mine had 270 MHz and this is a slightly faster version with 360 MHz. When I got the free one 5 or so years later, I obviously switched to the slightly faster one. This comes in this desktop kind, what the Unix folks call pizza box style cases. When it came out, this was one of the cheaper Sun workstations and the first one making use of many PC-like components with a parallel IDE bus and regular ATI graphic chip, IDE CD-ROM and things like this. The keyboard and mouse, however, are the Sun proprietary with a Sun specific connector where the mouse is being plugged into the keyboard. Connector wise, it comes with Ethernet built in. This is an analog VGA port. For some reason, many Unix workstation vendors used female kind serial ports, so there are this gender changer, of course USA patented, that converts this female sub-D to a male sub-D connector to connect all your regular serial peripherals. So usually you need to have this converter plugged in most of the time. And here are the usual line in and out, microphone and headphone out connectors, separated connectors as they usually were back in the days, and the Sun specific mouse and keyboard serial port here. Over the years I upgraded mine with an adaptive SCSI card and as well as USB ports, maybe even USB 2. Let's directly give you a look inside the machine as well. With the upgrades it is a little bit full with parallel cables, just like the machines were back in the day. Here at the side we find the 64-bit Sun UltraSPARC 2i processor. As I said, initially I had a 270 MHz version, this is a 360 MHz version, surprisingly made in UK, followed by some Sun-specific chipset, the regular ATI Rage 3D graphics and Ethernet circuitry. There, slightly hidden, is the infamous nvram with built-in battery that is empty after a decade or two. So I already some month ago soldered some wires to connect here an external battery. About this I will make a dedicated video. Here is a PCI riser card that is probably usually empty. Already a decade ago I fitted here an adaptive SCSI card that may not be supported by Sun Solaris or Sun OS and does not work booting the machine in the open firmware. So I still boot from IDE and only use this on Linux as soon as the Linux driver can take over and make use of it. Obviously this is way faster than the entry-level IDE option. Surprisingly it comes with a floppy disk that I probably next to never used, and I heard here can also be a smart card reader module installed, so a regular old-fashioned IDE drive. And here's some set of memory slots. As you can see I even have official Sun parts in there, and this massive parallel cables obviously do not make it that pretty to look inside. Here at the hard disk mount I fitted a higher end IBM Ultrastar SCSI drive for the higher performance, and earlier I had a laptop IDE drive mounted here. However, later I replaced this with a disk on chip module here that directly plugs into the IDE socket. Surprisingly it even has a Siemens chip. Do not even remember what that was for. An entry-level consumer-grade crystal audio chip. So that's it for the inside. My custom upgrades aside, rather standard PC desktop hardware. So let's close the case and turn it on for you. Power Ethernet VGA is plugged in. As usual for these machines of this day and age, the nvram battery is empty. Obviously, I already soldered some wires onto it. So the open firmware has no Ethernet address and host ID. While it probably could continue booting at least Linux from the disk. To ensure proper operation, I can also show you how to reset this nvram and Ethernet and host ID. One thing is simply set defaults, and to set the host ID and MAC address, you can just type here some more or less random numbers. This is host ID and MAC address. We just use here some dead coffee. This mkpl expects also input in form of Ctrl D, Ctrl R. And if it prints the copyright, I think it did not work, so maybe I gave it the wrong input. Maybe let's try invalidating the checksum. FID prom at 1 XOR F MKP. Okay, 8/2013 VMKPL Control DR. Now it worked. So maybe it really needed invalidating the ID prom checksum. We have no date, but we have Ethernet serial number and format type and such. For a longer operation, I also should have set the deac switch to false, otherwise it's going through some more intense memory test each time, but on this more faster machine it probably doesn't matter so much. So this is a SPARC Linux loader. Probably just pressing enter should usually load Linux here. You also see Sun Ultra 510, they share the same firmware apparently. UltraSPARC 2E 360 MHz, and we have 256 MB of memory installed. Yeah, the little bit annoying thing is now that this Unix utilities complain about the date. Of course, I first had to find out what exactly was the root password of this machine. Unfortunately, this is a slightly newer test machine. Back in the day, I had this fully working and set up with X running and everything, which is not so special on this machine as it is an ATI Rage 3D graphics, as also seen in LSPCI, some ATI Rage 3D Pro there. CPU-wise, this is a 64-bit UltraSPARC 2i with integrated floating point unit, obviously, and as seen in the LSPCI, my usually not used in SunSPARC machines, Adaptic AIC 7861 Ultra SCSI adapter with this probably 10K RPM IBM SCSI drive. Back in the day it felt quite fast, but coming back from modern SSDs and such on high-end servers, simply running SVNST subversion status, especially with this older version that I think the newer version of Subversion has less maintenance files. This decade-old version of Subversion still stored this metadata in each subdirectory, so it's scanning and opening 10,000 of files, which sounds like this. Nothing better than the sound of rotating SCSI storage, I guess. The first run probably takes a minute or two. As in T2 we have really many directories. At least for each package a directory, so it's some maybe 5,000 directories or something like this. Okay, now we see the first results coming in. I had this recently booted up some months ago, this is why there are some set standard changes. Actually it didn't take that long, only, what was it, maybe a minute. The second run should be significantly faster when it's coming from the kernel I/O buffer cache. Yeah, much faster. Less than 12 seconds actually. So right now it's running a T2 version 8 from 2009 with apparently some slight UDEF hiccup. Anyway, that's it for today with the start of the SPARC season in my YouTube channel. I have some more videos scheduled for this kind of machines. We could even come back later for building latest T2, latest kernel, latest GCC and glibc and things like that. And also get an X server running again, which may or may not be a trivial task. It may just compile and run. However, this support for vintage chips like this ATI is sometimes a little bit rotten, and also the Sun-specific PCI bits and such. I think this even already has PCI domains and so on. It may not just work and may require some bug hunting, as this kind of configurations are not that often tested. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something, and don't forget to subscribe for plenty of more videos to come.